called Seeing Doublets. And we're doing this, obviously, it was Shakespeare's birthday yesterday. And this whole week with my group, Jakespeare, we are kind of celebrating Shakespeare. We have the Comedy of Errors started streaming on Friday, I believe, and it streams until this Friday. So if you haven't gotten a chance to take that in, you still can. Just a quick plug, it's $5. It gives you a 48-hour on-demand viewing window. So that means as soon as you start it, you have 48 hours to watch it as many times as you want, play, pause, rewind, whatever. And not only do you get the show, you get a free album download by a great folk band called The Altogether from New Jersey. They did a production in New Jersey of another twins Shakespeare comedy, Twelfth Night, and they wrote some songs for it. So check. And so if you buy the ticket to Comedy of Errors, you get that as well. And one last plug is going on right now. We are having auditions for our second season of what we call the podcast plays, like radio plays, but as podcasts. So if that's something that you might want to try, being a voice actor, that information is on our website as well. All right. So getting to Seeing Doublets, Gregory, who is our host, our moderator, our expert Shakespeare guy, he'll introduce himself more fully in just a minute. But we have set this up, hopefully, so that if you have any questions or comments about the material, please do share them with us. You can put them into the chat. So you should see a little chat option either at the bottom of your screen or to the left of your screen. It looks like a little bubble. And if you click on that, a chat window opens up where you can type something in. There's also a reactions button. And if you click on that, you'll see that there's like a hand raising one that you can click, and that'll show like a little hand on your box. Gregory just did it for us, so you can see what it might look like if you want to share vocally your question. So please do. Or if you're more of the kind to just sit back and take it all in, that's perfectly all right as well. As I said, feel free to have your cameras on or off, whatever you're more comfortable with. And the request that we do make is to stay muted, unless, of course, you are talking. You want to share something, because background noises can be, distracting to everybody and so on. And, I'm right by a window with a busy street on it, so I don't want you to hear the trucks going by and so on. Mm-hmm. So that is my piece. At this point, so we don't waste any more time with my blathering, I'll turn it over to the man of the hour, Gregory Lannom. Take it away, Greg.
Oh, thank you, Jake. Shakespeare expert. But Jess Townsend, who some of you know who've worked with her in the Jakespeare productions, recommended me to Jake. And she knows 2 or 3 people locally who are Shakespeare nerds, as I like to refer to myself, who could lead this. But I'm glad to be here, and I've done some research to kind of fill in some blanks and to find out some information that will be helpful to this. I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I'm predominantly a visual artist, but I'm also a poet, a writer, and occasionally an actor. I've done some stuff virtually with Jess in a online group we called Streaming Stage Left, and we've done productions over Zoom just like Jakespeare. And I might as well go ahead and paste in the chat the link to the Streaming Stage Left YouTube channel if any of you wanted to check out some of the things we've done over the last couple of years while the plague has been raging on all our houses. The theme of our discussion today, seeing Doublets, the pithy title, is about the recurring themes of twins, mistaken identity, and, as I call it, cross-dressing hijinks, which really is going to get into a broader topic of gender identity in the plays. And like Jake said, I'll have, there'll be time where I will say, now we're opening up to discussions, either just like that or more, subtly, And I have some information I've prepared, and it's not a lecture, but I have some stuff to kind of set the table and some things that hopefully will spur discussion from you all. Please be respectful of everybody's wanting to have a chance to speak, and also respectful of each other's points of views as we share these insights, perspective, and opinions. It's by no means a debate, but a mutual discussion on these themes. And I want to go ahead and get started. And here's just little opening remarks I have to kind of get us set up here. As I've advised, this is not a lecture, but a webinar. And a few minutes here, we'll talk about the idea of twins, identity, and gender confusion, quotes, and why these themes were important to Shakespeare's audience during the Elizabethan times that these were originally produced. And I'm kind of focusing on understanding why things were done the way they were there and how they speak to us today with our more modern ideas about gender identity and so forth. I don't want to assume that it's common knowledge. So first of all, women were not allowed to perform on the stage. So a big part of this whole discussion is the reality that all the actors were male, and it was young boys before their voices changed at puberty who were usually the ones to fill the female roles. The reasons behind this were due to the puritanical spirit of the time, and besides, women at that time being regulated mainly to stay home, make, and then raise babies. And so performing in the theater was considered immodest for women to be involved with it, and theater in general was considered immoral. And if it wasn't because Queen Elizabeth liked the theater so much that maybe we wouldn't even have these plays. This same puritanical attitude extended to dress in society, as men and women were expected to dress according to their sex. And for the sake of this webinar, sex is equaling the biological identity, and gender is sexual identity as more of a social construct. Also, regarding dress, there were actually laws and regulations in place at the time that really required people to dress according to their class. So this is one reason the device of characters disguising themselves is used so often, because of society's strict dress code at the time. So the theater, you see, was breaking all these rules. In short, audiences were witnessing actors doing what they were not themselves allowed to do in common society. And the theater, due to this license, was subversive, whether it was intended to be or not. The negative influence the theater was thought to have on women by those in charge of maintaining the status quo was a concern, and female audience members witnessing women doing and saying things that were not allowed to had to be exciting and a form of release and even wish fulfillment by those in attendance. And by the way, a woman who even wanted to go to a play was considered a low woman, as a Shakespeare term, a common stale, so to speak. So some women would disguise themselves when they went to the theater at the risk of violating the social taboos, if not the law. Which is why, while there are many strong heroines in these plays, their ultimate goal / reward is to get a good husband and settle down, and little idea of them having their own autonomy. Another way the male-dominated society is reinforced is the repeated theme that female characters should be faithful and chaste, whereas male characters, not so much. A female character who expresses her social freedom in these plays is labeled a whore, and so forth. But it is not just the strict religious views of Shakespeare's time that explains the all-male cast or how female characters were allowed to be represented, and these customs go way back to the days of Greek theater. One reason for a female character to disguise themselves as a man was a practical one. Since young men were relied on mostly to play the female roles, these were inexperienced actors with a small window before puberty that their ability to play a woman would be convincing. So what better solution than to allow the actor to play a man for significant portions of the play, especially if the female character is one of the main ones. Let the guy play a man so they won't have to act so hard, eh? All these elements of an all-male cast, characters in disguise, cross-dressing or not, cause these plays automatically to involve layers of dramatic irony. The fourth wall is being broken, if not the fifth, meaning the audience knows what the character is up to in terms of dramatic irony, or for the sake of our discussion, who the character really is, whereas other characters in the play do not know their true identity. We have men pretending to be females who sometimes then disguise themselves as men, which allows them to take a break from pretending to be a woman. We have characters in disguise, and we have the overall blurring of identity during a time in which identity politics regarding sex and class were strictly enforced. And while in today's Western society, we still see these puritanical attitudes, Shakespeare's plays and all the gender confusion speak quite differently to us today, in a time when many people are fighting such restrictions and embracing their gender identity in all its myriad forms. Now, let me take a little break of water here. Now, while our first play we're going to visit doesn't really deal with gender identity the way some others we'll visit do, none of Shakespeare's plays quite deals with the concept of identity like A Comedy of Errors, whose whole point is mistaken identity involving sets of twins. And just real briefly, during Shakespeare's time, twins were actually fairly rare, mostly due to high infant mortality rates. So an audience seeing a play about two sets of identical twins would have been a fantastic diversion. The play is the Bard's broadest farce, relying on slapstick puns, wordplay, and repeated incidents of mistaken identity, clearly designed for pure laughs and light entertainment, with the audience having to suspend their disbelief that two sets of identical twins, despite never seeing each other except as infants, would look and dress and sound alike as adults. Disguise is also an element in this play as well, as the abbess is revealed to be Gion's wife, thought long deceased or at least lost at sea. Now, since the Shakespeare Virtual Theater Company, who's hosting this webinar today, is currently does currently have a performance of Comedy Errors available for view, as Jake said at the beginning, I would actually like Jake to give his insights on the play and maybe talk about how his theater company are approaching the play. And since Joe Dudley, the director of Comedy of Errors, is also here, Joe, you could also add to this. But Jake, just do you have any thoughts about Comedy of Errors for the group?
Well, I'll tell you why I picked that play versus any of the others that I could have. I love comedies. First of all, I think Shakespeare he's a great dramatic writer, but he's, I think, sometimes an even better comedic writer if you can get the kind of the bodiness of some of the jokes that he puts in there. Which is right up my alley. But I have twins. And so something about twins, a story about twins, I just automatically connect with. It's also a show of his that's not rare, that's not done too often, as much as, the Scottish play or, some of Midsummer Night's Dream or even Twelfth Night. You'll see those done a lot more. I have a short attention span, and Comedy of Errors is probably one of his shortest plays as well. And I think especially for a virtual venue where a lot of people are going to be watching it on their computer. I mean, they might be able to connect it to their TV, whatever. There's a shorter attention span for virtual theater, I think, in general. And so it worked on that level. And when I talked to Joe, the director who has joined us today, one of the things I was really interested in, and Joe did a great job of it, is that you can have a little bit of fun with the visual effects of this play. And on a stage play, you can't have the same actor playing both sets of twins. It's just not possible unless you clone them, I guess. But in a pre-recorded type of setting like we have done, you can have one actor play both twins, so they really do look alike. And so I think that was something that I was kind of interested in, and Joe took it and ran with it and did a great job. So I think those are really kind of the reasons behind my choosing to do this one.
And Joe, how did your production address the how to get along the idea of the twins? Because I have not seen this yet. I plan on watching it maybe tomorrow or sometime this week at least. But how did you address the idea of trying to get across the suspension of disbelief of twins when they're clearly not twins?
Yeah, so it was interesting. A lot of it what had to do with the costuming, I think. I really rolled with the idea of people wearing different hats to be portraying different characters. And so I had the twins wearing basically two colors. We had red and blue. And when they're wearing red, they were representing they were representing the Syracusan ones. And then if they're wearing blue, they would be representing the Ephesian ones. And so it was kind of a witty, kind of blink and you miss it kind of opportunities. So our actress playing Dromio, Nika, she actually would wear the different colors. And she was really good with quick changes. And so we could see as an audience that this was a different twin that was entering the scene, whereas the characters in the show are obviously pretty oblivious to that. So it was really cool. And then, like Jake said, it was really cool to do visuals involving both Nika and Jess, who played Antipholus. And we had moments where I actually had one set of twins like pre-record. And so I actually edited that in post-production. So it actually looks like they're talking to each other, which is really cool.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And it was done over Zoom, is that right? So did you have the names of the characters in the windows at the bottom left?
Yeah, that was interesting. Sometimes when because I do other productions on Zoom as well, sometimes the names are shown and sometimes they're not shown. So it's always a gamble trying to figure out, like, will they be seen? But I did have all of the actors rename themselves as their character names. And then to add to the confusion, I had Jess and Nika, instead of specifying which twin they were, to just be names Antipholus and Dromio.
That's really fascinating. That's amazing, and it's quite a different experience reading the play right from a book, or watching it with the names on the windows, and then seeing a performance where you're not clear maybe which one is which, and if they looked alike and dressed alike, the audience will be just as confused as the characters on the stages. So that comes into, again, the suspension of belief, this belief that the Shakespearean audiences were asked to just accept. Because during the time, it may not be common knowledge that the actors, when they gave soliloquies and stuff, they didn't just kind of stare into space to be or not to be. They often, it was more like a TED Talk, where they would like talking directly to the groundlings and the people in the audience, and there was a great give and take. So the audience the fourth wall was kind of already broken, and the whole identity issue we're addressing today is that fifth wall. Well, I look forward to watching the play and checking out Joe, and I'm sure it's excellent, and I know Jess did a great job because she's a great local actress of mine here. Did anybody else want to speak up about their thoughts about Comedy of Errors and anything we've discussed so far?
I do want to make another point.
Joe.
Something I wanted to emphasize with especially the casting of my show, I wanted it to be prominently women performers. And so I thought that added an additional layer to the gender imbalance kind of in the show. And I do want to say, I feel like all of my cast did really well with it. And it was a lot of fun being a part of the production process and seeing the actors try to weave through the story, because it is a pretty complex story that is very tightly packed into a short play. So it was a really cool process.
Oh, well, that's very interesting. I was not aware of that, Joe, and I look forward to checking that when I watch it. And today, with our current views, more liberal views about gender, even though, like I said, the puritanical attitude is obviously still out there, it makes as much sense to have an all-female cast of a Shakespeare play as it does to have an all-male cast like they did back at the time. So we can really have fun playing around with the gender swapping and letting everybody just play the character and let the audience just soak that in and see what it reads to them. All right. Well, thanks so much. And if nobody else has anything else to add or any questions or anything, we'll move on along.
Hello.
Katie? Hey, Katie. Yes.
Hi, how's it going?
Good,
I was
good.
also in Comedy of Errors.
Yes.
And I don't know, is my camera on?
We cannot see you, no.
Oh, weird. All right, let's see. Let me try again. Oh, here we go. I know what the problem is. There.
Lots of buttons on the bottom. There we go. Yeah, so
Errors. It was really great. It was great working with the cast and with Joe as the director. And so I played Adriana. So Comedy of Errors reminds me so much of Twelfth Night. It's almost like an early draft of Twelfth Night. There were definitely, I noticed a lot of parallels. I know Twelfth Night very well. And so as I was getting to know Comedy of Errors, I couldn't help but just make those connections everywhere they popped up. I should actually know some of these connections I can talk about right now, but yeah, it's when I remember them, I'll mention them.
well, Katie, that's an excellent segue because our next play we're going to visit is Twelfth Night. And so thank you for that. And maybe we can come back to you in a few minutes here once I get the table set for this. And thank you, Jake and Joe and Katie, for your insights there. Comedy of Errors, at the very least, reminds us that despite the deep thinking we're doing this afternoon, kind of sort of about Shakespeare's plays and centuries of scholarship and everything, Wild Bill, as I like to affectionately call him, was cranking out these plays to entertain people, and sometimes there isn't a lot of deepness to a play. And Comedy of Errors is a great example of a play designed for just as a pure comedy, and Shakespeare's a lot of his plays are, to use Polonius's term, pregnant. And we can get a lot of insights from them, but you can't help but think if William Shakespeare had his own window right now, if he'd be rolling his eyes at some of the conversations we're having about his plays. It's like, well, I didn't mean that at all, this little thing there. Anyway, the theme of twins in disguise and mistaken identity, and can continue now with an examination of gender in perhaps Shakespeare's greatest comedy, Twelfth Night. And in this play, briefly give some information here. We see a young woman pretending to be a young man through what could be argued a flimsy reason that she's paranoid about being a young maiden alone in Illyria. And we see throughout the play various examples of courting, wooing, unrequited love, characters of the same sex displaying affection for each other, although they are mistaken about that because of the disguises. Either genuinely affection between characters, or Viola hiding her true sex again, and the general shenanigans of tomfoolery here. The play was written for the Christmas season, and one tradition during Shakespeare's time was that these Twelfth Night festivals included the Lord of Misrule, which I guess would be Lord Sir Toby in this, who was usually a peasant, or at least from the lower class in general, often a person thought to be a fool. And they were appointed to be in charge of the holiday celebrations, organizing parades, masquerade parties, plays, feasts, whatnot. This was a time in which the prescribed roles in society were turned on their head, and Twelfth Night turns a lot of people on their heads. And the strict rules I mentioned before of enforcement of dress and behaving according to your class and sex were relaxed, and some general debauchery, madness, and drunkenness were allowed. You were allowed, within reason, to do what you will, which is the alternative title for Twelfth Night. It was a form of release many enjoyed, given the puritanical society at large, which led to the holiday of Christmas for a time being canceled by Christians. The play Twelfth Night reflects this spirit of foolishness, drunkenness, obsession with love/lust, and of people in authority being sent up and deceived by people beneath their station. Identical twins drive the main plot, and again, Elizabethan audiences would have been fascinated by this, even more so due to the impossible device of identical twins of the opposite sex. Whether Shakespeare was aware of this being impossible isn't clear, likely not, but again, his audiences were asked to suspend their disbelief continually during these plays, while at the same time awash in dramatic irony on several levels. The big theme of the play, in my opinion, is all the sexual relationships and how many different examples of it we see in the play, whether caused by some gender confusion or not. We have Viola's love for Duke Orsino, which she feels she cannot express. Orsino's unrequited obsession with the Countess Olivia. Olivia falling for Viola, thinking she is a young man named Cesario. The moments when Orsino catches himself thinking about Cesario outside an accepted male-male relationship of the period. Malvolio's secret pining for Olivia, revealed outrageously by a servant's trick. Sir Andrew Aguecheek's incompetent wooing of Olivia by Sir Toby Belch's insistence in order to take advantage of him. The sea captain Antonio's affection for Sebastian, which the play suggests is more than platonic. Maria and Sir Toby Belch end up marrying, and Olivia, despite mistakenly marrying Sebastian, thinking he was Cesario, takes him as her husband, and Orsino now realizes why he had some confusion about Cesario, because he was really a young man, and Viola gets her man. While we must remind ourselves again that at the time produced, all these characters with their romantic entanglements were played by male actors. And there's a key speech by Viola I just want to read just real quick that sort of shows how Shakespeare, to comedic effect, is playing with a male actor pretending to be a female and then pretending to be a male. And the audience knows the actor is male and how this is sort of played with. And this is right after Viola as Cesario visits Olivia at Duke Orsino's bidding to try to woo her. And Viola has just been given the ring by an impudent Malvolio. I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside have not charmed her. She made good view of me, indeed so much that sure methought her eyes had lost her tongue, for she did speak in starts distractedly. She loves me, sure. The cunning of her passion invites me in this churlish messenger. None of my lord's ring, why he sent her none. I am the man. If it be so, as 'tis, poor lady, she were better love a dream. The skies, I see thou art a wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. How easy is it for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms? Alas, our frailty is the cause, not we. For such as we are made of, such we be. How will this fadge? My master loves her dearly, and I, poor monster, fond as much on him. And she, mistaken, seems to dote on me. What will become of this? As I'm a man, my state is desperate for my master's love. As I am a woman, now alas today, what thriftless sighs shall poor Olivia breathe? O time, thou must entangle this. Not I, it is too hard and not for me to untie. Whew. So we have a male actor playing with the idea that he's a male, but pretending to be a woman. So it's the woman who's speaking now to the audience. And just when we have a strong female character who's in the crux, the fulcrum, so to speak, of all this action, we still have Shakespeare having to go along with the time as the women being the weaker sex. And the women being the weaker sex, even this sentiment today, means more than physical or emotion. It means, a much, more of a subhuman almost sort of sentiment here. So the character has to sort of say, "Oh, I'm a weak." We have the fault. So here we have a Twelfth Night with all these shenanigans going on, and the idea of Viola, the actor as a male, initially as a woman. He gets to be a male for most of the rest of the play, although for these interchanges at times. And then the summation. And I'd like to go ahead and open up the room now to any sort of comments or observations or perspectives and about how these gender-based hijinks, so to speak, and how they inform modern plays about Twelfth Night and how different modern audiences get out of these plays, because normally it's commonplace for Viola to be played by a woman.
I've noticed that a lot of productions that I've seen of Twelfth Night have music added to it, and I know that Shakespeare would often include music, especially like at the end of his shows. But the productions I've seen, I saw one in Stratford, Ontario, at the Stratford Festival, which is pretty well known for Shakespeare's work, and the one that I was telling about, the other twin comedy, Twelfth Night, this one obviously, and how that band created an album for it, and so I'm wondering what about Twelfth Night seems to evoke in people almost like a musical sort of feel versus, I mean, many of his plays have been turned into musicals, but this one quite, obviously is more musical oriented, I think, than some others. And what your thoughts might be on that.
I think that goes to the idea of it being festival time that the play was written for, and there being a lot of music just either organized or spontaneously. And we see Sir Toby Belch and his posse, or his minions, or his what's a better word for say that?
His entourage.
His entourage. Okay, that's good. Partying. And of course we have the full festi with his songs, and the play ends with the song, a very sort of somber song, oh, the wind and the rain,
Right.
Making the play kind of like the Festi is a very interesting character who has a lot to do with the music in here and the sort of tone of the play. And it's almost like it's almost like the play he's telling. He's all over the place. He jumps from household to household. He's a freelance fool, and you can almost see him being almost like the chorus in Henry V, where he's the one who's kind of like leading us all the way through the red string all the way through it. But I think it's supposed to be a fun play with a lot of music in tune with the festival time of the year there, Jake. I think that's probably the biggest reason it's in there.
Makes sense to me.
Katie, do you have some more insight, observations about Twelfth Night after my little spiel that I had about the play?
Hi. Yeah, I mean, one of the parallels between Twelfth Night and Comedy of Errors would be essentially the exotic setting. So, it's starting out with a shipwreck and the twins that are separated, and the idea that this setting is in this new place. In Comedy of Errors, the twins' father arrives, Aegeon, and he's in this foreign land. Illyria is very much a foreign land for Sebastian and Viola. And it's interesting because, just to tie in another contemporary issue, we've got displacement and refugees, and that's definitely something that's happening in both plays, and a really important issue in today's world. I've seen a lot of theater companies putting on these plays with that focus. We're starting to see that a little bit more. So I've spent some professional time with Twelfth Night. I directed a high school version of it years ago. And what we did in our production was we actually used Beatles music all throughout.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
And we started off the play with the song Magical Mystery Tour, just to give the sense that, hey, we're going on an adventure. We're going to a strange place.
Interesting.
Exotic lands. Illyria, in our version of the play, was actually inspired by Wonderland. And we found parallels between a lot of the characters and the characters in Wonderland. Our Viola wore an Alice in Wonderland dress. when she
Oh, that's
first,
fun.
arrived in Illyria. And Sir Toby is kind of like a Mad Hatter type of character.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Olivia, a Queen of Hearts. So, with the audience and our performers being high school students, they absolutely loved it. We had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, it's a good one, that 12th Night.
Yeah, Twelfth Night, with just all the foolishness that's in it, it lends itself to just have a lot of fun with the period and the place and the gender swapping, coming back to that there. One thing that's interesting about Twelfth Night is how it really, like I said, all the different kinds of relationships, good and bad, in this play, and how it's all sort of compared to Viola's love for or Orsino, and then everybody else in the play is kind of having different flavors of that, I wanted to share real quickly a photo that, well, I tell you what, I think I'll wait a bit later in it because we're running pretty good on time. I think we'll go ahead and move forward there. But thank you, Katie, for that. Anybody else have any observations or perspectives, opinions about Twelfth Night that they want to share with the group and our topic at large as the play deals with it?
I don't, but I'm enjoying listening. I love the conversation, and as an English literature major, former one, but I guess you're never a former English literature major. This has just been a really great conversation. I'm having the time of my life.
Okay, great. Well, we want this to be like a Fat Albert show where it's educational but entertaining at the same time.
Hi.
Let's go.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I haven't actually looked at Shakespeare since high school, so it's very invigorating to participate with Shakespeare and to have these sort of webinars going on.
Oh, great, Deborah. All right. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I need to explain some character names or some other things about a play, feel free to jump in the chat. I do have like I said, Jake, I have multiple Wikipedia pages open just in case I need to explain a character or something about a play. But thanks for that, Deborah. So we'll move right along, and then as the theme of as the Facebook event and the post that Jake made talked about, part of the description of this is moving from comedies into problem plays, and the Shakespeare's plays are most often divided into the tragedies, the histories, and the comedies. Histories usually, often about English history. So and the comedies are, like Katie pointed out, exotic locales, tragedies as well, like Romeo and Juliet. People wanted to see stories about these sort of things here. And I see your Jake. Yes, getting into that a bit more deeper into this idea of gender and how it's played out in these, because some of these problem plays, which aren't really pure comedies, and where we see Viola just disguising herself as a man, but not really using her disguise as a man to take advantage of that, and in this play that we're going to visit next, continues the theme of a young woman, a maid, disguising herself as a man in As You Like It. Now, this play, considered a comedy, but it's also one of these so-called problem plays where the theme is a bit sort of more fluid, and where it really doesn't confirm it being a pure comedy like Comedy of Errors and Twelfth Night. And when comedy is in the name of your title, there you go. There are multiple themes of characters being at odds with each other, and threats of death and banishment and so forth. And thanks to the character of Jock and his melancholic worldview, it has an existential heart. But for our purposes, As You Like It is the play in the canon that best plays with gender, in my opinion, in terms of a female character using a male disguise to play with how women are supposed to behave, in the character of Rosalind, who disguises herself as a young man named Ganymede. And that name is important because Ganymede was a divine Trojan hero described in the Iliad by Homer as the most beautiful mortal in history. In one myth, Zeus abducts Ganymede in an act that has since been recognized as an act of sodomy. The name's mythical association with homosexuality further complicates Rosalind's gender identity, and Shakespeare would have known this, and the audience at the time would have, many of them would have known the significance of the name Ganymede. So Shakespeare right away, and As You Like It, is really stretching the whole phenomenon of male actor pretending to be a female, then pretending to be a male, and then the male, the character demonstrating maleness. The audience at the time would have, like I said, known all that. And Rosalind clearly feels very liberated when she's pretending to be a young man. And while she is in love with Orlando, she, well, messes with Orlando under the pretense of testing his love for her, Rosalind. Rosalind, therefore, uses her male disguise much more freely than Viola does in her Cesario role, a role she is effectively hiding in, whereas Rosalind seems to experience liberation. And here we see where suspension of disbelief by the Shakespearean audience is kind of more, as Jake's question in chat is talking about, how we respond to this today and how liberation can come from owning what you feel is your gender identity. Rosalind, again, like we've seen in Twelfth Night, experiences a character of the same sex, Phoebe, a shepherdess, falling in love with her, while Phoebe is being wooed by Sylvius, a shepherd. Rosalind, towards the end of the play, seeks to sort out all these relationships because she's a man and she can do it, you see. And whereas a woman wouldn't have that province. And finally reveals herself to Orlando. And there's a happy ending with Rosalind giving an odd epilogue, which I'll actually go ahead and read in full. It's short. But this is, again, Rosalind on stage by herself addressing the audience in an epilogue, which is very unusual for a play. It is not the fashion to see the lady, the epilogue, but it is no more unhandsome than to see the lord, the prologue. If it be true that good wine needs no bush, 'tis true that a good play needs no epilogue. Yet to good wine they do use good bushes, and good plays prove the better by the help of good epilogues. What a case am I in then, that I am neither a good epilogue, nor cannot insinuate with you in the behalf of a good play? I am not furnished like a beggar, therefore to beg will not become me. My way is to conjure you, and I'll begin with the women. I charge you, O women, for the love you bear to men, to like as much of this play as please you. And I charge you, O men, for the love you bear to women, as I perceive by your simpering, none of you hate them, that between you and the women the play may please. If I were a woman, I would kiss as many of you as had beards that pleased me, complexions that liked me, and breaths that I defied not. And I am sure as many as have good beards, or good faces, or sweet breaths, will, for my kind offer, when I make curtsy, bid me farewell. So in a play where a female character is behaving unlike a lady, in fact, manipulating and resolving and having a good time pretending to be a man, enjoying the freedom that comes with that, we have a female character giving this epilogue, asking the audience to like the play, because it is a problem play, and to curtsy to her at the end. But after saying, if I were a woman, which plays on the reality of the actor being a man. So the suspension of disbelief is broken by the actor still as in costume as Rosalind, but basically saying, if I were a woman, because the reality is the person on stage is not. So it's almost like Shakespeare wants to ask of the audience's blessing for having a play where a female character has such a license while pretending to be a man, then reinforcing that Rosalind is a lady, while at the same time reinforcing, like I said, the constant dramatic irony and in-joke that goes on through all these plays and when any female characters are on stage, that she is a young man, an actor pretending to be a woman, which itself taking license and playing with gender during a time when in normal life that was a taboo. And just to wrap things up and make sure everything's according to Hoyle here, Shakespeare has the god of marriage himself, Hymen, appear and bless all the unions, because the lovers must all be married to keep things up to the moral code of the day. Now, I'd like to ask now at the group, how being able to pretend to be the opposite sex / gender, how that would change how you interact with others and how you feel you could accomplish much as such. Also, how many people have to disguise themselves to conform in society as they struggle to be their authentic selves, whether it's a question of gender identity or not. And Jake, this speaks to the question you had in chat. You wanted to speak to the idea of the cross-dressing or gender identity and how we will respond to that now, because it doesn't have the impact it did then, but in a certain way, it has possibly even more impact from a different angle because of people trying to assert their own gender identity in the current day. And you spoke to trans representation especially, which now in our current freedom of casting in these plays can be done easily in a Shakespeare play.
Yeah, I mean, I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll keep my thoughts kind of short and sweet if possible. But I just think that people, I wonder maybe if people back then would have been laughing at it, at some of the comedy and some of the mistaken identity and those issues in a different way than how we see it now. We're applying a certain lens to it, as I said in the comment, or a certain perspective, or or maybe sometimes thinking outside of what maybe Shakespeare was just going for a laugh. And if it offended people, great. And if not, well, fine. And if you got something out of it, fine. I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. But, I think that that's part of the reason why Shakespeare has been so timeless, is that his plays, in whatever thing is going on in the world, for better or worse, there's always something in one of his plays that you can take out and think of in relation to what's going on in the news or what have you. You know what I mean? So just with trans rights and so on, and I mean, you could talk about Black Lives Matter and apply it to like Othello or many other things, I'm sure. So that thought did go through my mind when I was also thinking about choosing them, because that was maybe subconsciously in the back of my mind about everything that has been happening. So I don't know. I just thought that the audience, their perspective is different and important too.
Well, one thing that's odd, Jake, about this scenario is how it's kind of flipped on its head. How the audience would not be offended by having the men on a stage pretending to be women dressing as women, and the dress would be so different between men and women that all a female character had to do was change clothes into man. And it's like, I don't recognize you anymore, right? Whereas today, if we gender swap roles and have, say, a woman be Malvolio, how people in the audience, some of them would be offended and triggered because it's not right, you see. Joe, I see your window popped up. Did you have some comments, observations, whatnot?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, in college, actually, I had the opportunity to play Ursula in my production of Much Ado About Nothing. And so I actually have experience wearing a bodice, which that's a whole nother story. But it's definitely a delicate balance, because obviously if I'm playing a feminine identifying role, there is the delicate balance of portraying like the stereotypes with it. Because I didn't want to play a woman as a joke, like haha, funny that that guy's a woman. But really it's just the way I saw it was, I'm filling this role that's contributing to this story. And so I think anyone could step into this role and play it. So that's how I tried to go about it. And in regards to like my mannerisms, I tried to like, obviously, because like there's the assumption I have to be like dainty, just waltzing about the stage, but I tried to just being myself playing the character rather than being myself pretending to be a woman playing the character.
That is the weird thing about all this, and again going back to the suspension of disbelief and the idea that, hey, let's give this guy a break and let the female character pretend to be a man so he can act more like himself, right? And how much you should act like a female character if you're a male actor, because the audience knows you're a female because of the dress. If you're in a period dress at the time, it's easy. Nowadays, when all the characters may be wearing pantaloons, it's again much more blurred, and this blurring speaks to the spectrum of gender identity in today's society that Shakespeare plays can help us with, because it's already a thing in a lot of these plays. We have about 4 minutes or so left. Does anybody have any sort of comments or anything, observations?
I wanted to also say, when we were talking about As You Like It, I do think it's interesting, especially with your earlier points, that women would often have to disguise themselves to see shows. I think it's interesting to hear that Shakespeare like addresses the women in the audience, assuming that they're actually in the audience. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh yes, that's a very, very good point. Right, yeah, because the audiences are made for both women and men. It's not just old boy stories, you know. I had a few photos I wanted to share with some of these, the idea of gender swapping as far as dress here. I'm going to share my screen and see if I can find these pictures readily or not. Let's see. Okay, does everybody see this photograph? I don't, okay, let me try it again.
Not yet.
Share screen,
Yeah, I was gonna.
window. Okay, here we are. Having to juggle. Okay, this is Sarah Bernhardt, the famous turn of the century stage actress as Hamlet, and this is dated 1899. So,
Gregory, we're only seeing like what I'm seeing is just the chat and like the you sharing. Like we're not seeing the picture.
okay, all right.
No,
Let me stop sharing. That did not work like I meant it to.
is it on a tab? Just you can share the tab, I think.
Let's see. Well, I mistakenly closed out the window. Let me try again with this. Beg pardon, folks. How about this? Or how about now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is a man as Lady Olivia in Twelfth Night.
Mark Rylance, right?
Yes. In 2017, no, wait. 2013. Broadway productions were done of Twelfth Night and Richard III with all male casts. Yes, this is Mark Rylance as Olivia. And in this play, it's done in period. So all the women have dresses, and all the women characters have this pale face with the blush and all that. So during Shakespeare's time, that might have been another device that was used to help with the gender identification, is the makeup of the characters. Kabuki, Jake, yes. And here I have a photo I will share in just a moment when I can figure out how to do this. I think I'm figuring out. And this, and I'm sorry if it's a small photograph here, guys. This is from the 2017 National Theatre of London's production of Twelfth Night, featuring an actress, Tamsin Greig, in the role of Malvolio, a female version of Malvolio, which of course adds another dimension to the character's obsession with Olivia, allowing for the representation of different sexual identities that would be not allowed at the time the plays were produced. So we have here a lesbian affection for Olivia from Malvolio's character, and here you see her in the famous yellow stockings. So I just wanted to share a couple of examples there of some more current examples of the cross-dressing hijinks and how modern theater is playing more and more with theater, because our society is slowly maybe coming to terms with the idea that gender is a social construct, and people need to be able to live their best lives and genuine lives and have their own autonomy where that is concerned, and how Shakespeare's plays at the time help us to that point in the modern day, even though clearly that would not have been his intention at the time. And Jake, it is 1 past the hour, and well, I do have some more material, but we are out of time, and I think we've covered 3 bases at least here this afternoon.
Gregory, thank you so much on behalf of everyone. I'm sure that was really educational and entertaining for me, and I hope everybody else also enjoyed it. So
Thank you very much.
Very nice job, Gregory. Appreciate it. And folks, I hope that you were able to take something from it and enjoyed it as well. I will be sending you at the email address that you used to register for this thing as a quick follow-up, so you can provide any feedback that you'd like, hopefully constructive feedback. I hope to do more of these types of webinars. I'm always, if you've worked with me, hopefully you know that I'm always looking for collaboration. Even though it's named Jakespeare, it's not really about me at all. I just thought it sounded like Shakespeare. Had to give my dad credit for that one. But enough about me. Look, I'm already talking about me, and I said it's not about me. So my point is, if you have any suggestions for things you would like to see or even host, as Gregory has done here, please reach out and let me know. And just, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, TikTok. But anyway, check out the Comedy of Errors with Katie and Deborah and, of course, Joe. And thank you, Gregory, once again. That was wonderful, and I appreciate you donating your time to the Bard's Birthday Bash.
Well, thank you so much, Jake. I've been honored to been asked to do this, and I'm a big Shakespeare nerd, so this is just meat and potatoes for me. And thank you all for attending, and I hope you all did enjoy it and get something from it.
All right, folks. Have a great rest of your Sunday. We will hopefully see you again in the future. Thanks again.
Thank
you,
everyone.
everybody.
Good to see everyone.
That was
Nice to see you,
great.
Katie.
Nice to meet everyone.
Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.